Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to be working on the 2022 JL High Tide that we picked up. We're going to be putting a lift on. We got some all new steering components. We've got a few things that we've already done, which we'll clue you in on them in a minute. And let's get working on it. We've already done a few things to this because we couldn't wait, and we'll go through with them. We'll go through what we did with them. We'll show you what we did coming right up. All right, before we start working on it, I'll show you what we got. We got brand new tie rod and drag link. We got the steering support brace. These components are from Steer Smarts. We also got the relocation bracket for the track bar. It is also from Steer Smarts. And then the lift. We got the rear correction brackets, shocks, which the red is going to go away, coils, fully adjustable upper and lower control arms, and new drive shaft. The lift that we're putting on is from Metal Cloak. It's their 4.5-inch game changer, complete kit. Obviously, they did not come this color. Metal Cloak has all their stuff is in a gold color coating. Don't really care for the gold color or that coating from the East Coast with all the salt and weather we get, so we chose to sandblast everything, prep it and powder coat it. And give a unique color scheme for our truck. And from there, we'll go over to these bad boys and what we'll be putting on. The Mildstar Patagonias, 38-inch, 1350 tire. All right, now that you've seen everything we're putting on, let's get to work. First thing we're going to do is we're going to get it jacked up, get all the wheels off, and we're going to take some preliminary measurements of wheelbase and toe to have something to reference later when we're setting up the alignment. Okay, we just got our prototype alignment brackets on each wheel, all four corners. We're going to go around, we're going to tighten the lugs back up, and then we'll start taking some preliminary measurements. Just after we put everything on, we know that we got our wheelbase is correct and our toe adjustments. Now with these, we're going to go through and we'll level each corner. Now the other alignment plates out there on the market right now have you using tape measure. This is set up that you can use both tape measure or digital tape measures, which makes it a little easier, a little more accurate if you want something more than just using a tape measure. You can see we have, for the tail adjustment, we have 2 lasers. It has 4 windows total, so that you can maneuver these from hole to hole depending on if there's anything in the way. And you can see this one says 6 foot, and this one says 6 5/16. And then what it's bouncing off on is the solid plate over there. And you can see both lasers. Okay, so now we have our starting measurements. We have both sides for the wheelbase to make sure when we do our front axle after the adjustments we get it nice and square. And we've got an initial tail adjustment from the factory that we can then compare to later when we set it up. All the parts that we are installing, such as the lift and the front steering parts, were all bought with our own money. None of this stuff was given to us, so any review or anything we say about it will be our honest opinion of what we think of the actual product. Okay, now that we've got everything done, we've got our alignment plates off. Now we'll get it jacked up and we'll get the jack stands moved from the suspension over to the frame. We have it sitting up on the suspension because in order to have the correct measurements for later on, we need to have it under its own weight. Move on to pulling the front drive shaft out. Now we're moving on to the sway bar end links. All right, now that we've finished up with the sway bar end links, and the brake lines, removing them brackets off the frame, we'll now move to the springs, shocks, and track bar. Springs come right out. All right, now we're going to start installing the new control arms. right, so we got one of the new uppers in on the passenger side. We're gonna go over and do the same thing on the driver, and then we'll start on the lowers. All right, at this point, now that we've got the upper and lower control arms in on both sides, before we go ahead and put the springs back in, we're gonna go ahead and add our steering box and track bar support bracket now before the spring is in there, and it makes it harder for us to get to. It's very important with this lift that the coil seats properly into the coil pads. So what I have to do is I have to move this down and spin it so that it lines up with the end of the coil. Try it there. And there it is. So it lines up down here on the bottom, and you can't really see it, but it lines up here on the top. All right, the next step is we have to drill out this hole here where the old brake bracket went, and the hole in the bottom of the old spring perch to accept the new outbound shock brackets. All right, next up is the shocks. moving on to installing the track bar relocation bracket. All right, so I got the selector shaft nut on, and I will put the bearing support in. And now we're going to proceed to adding the sway bar quick disconnects. Okay, so we basically got all the main components of the lift on. We finished up the sway bar end links, the quick disconnects. We still have tie rod assembly and drag link to put on. But for the time being, we're going to start working on our measurements and start setting up the control arms and the track bar, get everything adjusted out right. So I've already gone around, done the first set of measurements. It looks like the axle is sitting back a little over an inch. That's why it was important to take the initial measurements, because we know exactly where things were. And so now we're going to get under, we'll start adjusting the control arms. All right, now we've got the upper and lower control arms adjusted. We're going to move on to taking the drag link out and the tie rod and start setting up the new steering components. All right, we're back. It's the next day. Basically, out the front end is almost complete. Everything is torqued except for the upper and lower control arms. We're going to leave them undone until we get the wheels back on it and verify our caster. And we don't want any binding, so we'll do that once it's on the ground. Get you a look at what we got completed, and then we'll start with the back. going to start on the back. First thing I gotta do is pull off the plastic at the back bumper to get to the upper shock mount. We'll get the shocks off, sway bar disconnected, brake lines, control arms, and we'll start putting on the new stuff. Alright, so we just got the shocks, all the little pieces off on both sides. We're gonna get ready to drop the rear down and get the springs out. Then we'll start moving over to the control arm relocation bracket and getting that mounted. Alright, we got the upper and lower control arm reposition, geometry correction bracket installed. That took actually a while to get in. It was not exactly easy going. Upper and lower control arms are in. We just disconnected the emergency brake and the vent tube from the axle. Now we're going to move to put the rear springs in. Very important with these that the coil pockets and the rubber topper go into the position that they're supposed to be in. There's a rubber piece sticking off the back of the cup. There's a hole that you have to line up with it, and then you have the actual pocket where the spring, where the end of the coil lays in, and you have to really make sure you're in there, otherwise you can get a lean and have one side sticking up. So as you can see, it's a little tough to get them in there, but once you do, you're good to go. All right, so we just wrapped up the back. Everything is torqued. We got the bump stops in place. Back is completely ready to go. We'll give you a look and see. Right now it's fully up on its own weight, and then we'll get a shot of it fully at droop and let you guys see what this looks like. Now here you see the suspensions. It's fully underweight. These are the geometry correction brackets. Work out really nice. As you can see, the upper is almost completely level. There's full extension, and you can see that correction bracket on how much better it full droop. All right, next up is we're going to throw the rear tires on it and get the back end on the ground, square away a few things in the front, and take it from there. All right, so we got the tires back on so that we can check some ride height and to check our final caster numbers on the front end. Now that we got that all, everything looks good. We're gonna pull the front tires back off, get all the front stuff torqued down to spec, and go from there. Okay, now we're finished up with pretty much everything. The front drive shaft's in, we've torqued everything, we've greased everything. You may have noticed we haven't put a steering stabilizer on, and we're not going to until we take it out for a test drive. Steering stabilizers are nice, they can help a lot, but they also can cover up other issues. So first we'll go out with no steering stabilizer, we'll know if everything is good. We can put the steering stabilizer on and we're good to go. The other thing we're going to be doing is putting the stock tires back on. And we're doing that because we know the situation with the tires. We know there's no vibration, no bouncing, no issues with those tires whatsoever. So any issues with the vehicle, we know is coming from the lift. And we know where to go back and start looking. So we're going to put tires back on. We're going to tighten lugs all up. And we're going to go out for a test drive.
And just like that, it's 3 weeks later. Let me explain. So when we last left you, we were getting ready to take a ride to test out everything after we got all the components of the lift on, and we ran into a laundry list of issues. It took a solid week to get the problem figured out, and then probably another half a week deciding on what the component that we needed to replace was going to actually be. All said and done, we got everything figured out. We're going to do another video on the issue that we ran into. We did run into several. What we went through to fix that issue, what the solution ended up being, and then we did replace a part with an upgraded piece that we would highly recommend doing, especially if you have any kind of lift. It seems to make all the difference in the world of whether or not the issue that we had, which was death wobble, goes away. So it's now 3 weeks later. We didn't have time to get the filming done after we did figure it out. We left all the fun stuff out. The second video will consist of the issues that we had, fixes, opinions on whether or not there should have been a little more info out there on it. Doing a little research, you can find out what those issues are. A lot of mixed ideas on how this issue should be resolved. But we'll go over all that in a second video because there's quite a lot there. Some very important information if you're going to lift your Jeep, because it is super aggravating after you spend a good bit of money for your lift and get it all done and you're ready to go to literally have a vehicle you can't drive. So with that being said, we're going to pick up where we left off. We're going to take you for a ride. Obviously, it's not the original test ride. Everything's been solved. Everything drives good now. And then we'll continue on with finishing this video up with the flex test. And then we'll leave it there and we'll pick up everything else in the second video. Let's go for a ride. All right, and here we are. We got it lifted up. We do have the sway bar still connected. We want to get a sway bar connected number so that it equals comparison to the original number that we got. And we're going to turn our digital tape measure on. And we're going to, just like we did before, to the inside of the tire. lug there. There we go. So we're getting 1 foot 5 inch and 1/32. So compared to stock, we actually lost, it looks like just over an inch from our factory high tide suspension to our 4.5 inch lift. So that's not too worrisome because this is designed for the sway bar to be disconnected. So we're going to drop this down, disconnect the sway bar, and see what we get. All right, here we are with the sway bar disconnect. You can definitely see what a big change. Everything working out nicely. We do have a little contact between the spring and the steering brace. We're going to see if we can do some adjustments to stop that, but with that bigger steering brace in there, this little bit of interference we might be stuck with, but we'll try some adjusting and see if we can get that out of there. Everything looks pretty nice. So let's get that number. Side of the lug. So I don't know if you can see that, but it's 2 foot 4 inches 27/32. So pretty big increase on what from the stock. So take you around. Coil fully extended. Everything looks pretty good. Still got plenty of room in the back to stuff. We're actually not even on the bump stock in the back yet. So all in all, pretty happy with what we got. We've had the lift on for about 500 miles. So as you can see, we still have a little tweaking to do. See if we can get rid of this clearance issue in the front. If you have any questions about anything that's going on so far, any of the stock stuff, any of the parts that we use, leave a comment below. So we're going to finish up with the video here. We're pretty happy with the way things turned out. It took a lot of work to get here, and the second video will cover all the issues that we came across. It was definitely frustrating to say the least, but now, you know, we're ready to move on to other things. So look out for the second video. We won't take too long to get that out, and then we'll move on to the other things we've got planned. Thanks for watching.